Hey everybody, welcome to the inaugural podcast of the Nyedis Anarchy Series. I'm Adam Callan. I'm the CIO of Nyedis. You might have heard me before as the IDM Rockstar. That's what I used to go as on the blog back in the day, where we talk about all kinds of fun things in the identity management space. I mean, how do you make identity management fun? I have no idea, but I'm going to do my best. Today we're going to be talking a bit about identity management and more into the newer stuff, which is orchestration and kind of how we kind of segued into that realm. We're going to touch on web3. Web3 is a huge part of what we do at Nyedis here, and I know it's relatively new in the space of the enterprise. So we're going to talk about how we're bringing web3 into the enterprise, and then I want to talk about the LastPass breach. As you may have heard, there was a huge breach of LastPass and people's passwords getting all stolen, and how that happened recently came out. So we're going to talk a little bit about that too, because that's pretty exciting. For all of you guys that are new here, I mean, I'm new to this podcasting thing too, so you're going to hear me mess up a lot. So if you want to continue watching me mess up and talk about identity and access management, subscribe, like, comment, all that fun stuff. Share this with all your awesome identity management friends, because this is going to be, I promise, the only entertaining identity management podcast in the world, because it's not the most entertaining topic, but we're going to try our best here. So first, let's talk about identity management, where we were left off when the IDM Rockstar blog kind of trailed off and where we're at now. With identity access management, it's not the most entertaining. It's not the most fun, right? So what do we do to make this stuff fun? Well, what I like to do is look at future tech. That's like the new buzzword that I keep clinging on to, is where is the identity management space going? That's what really gets me excited. I want to know, where are we going to go? How is identity and access control going to be managed in a much easier, simplistic way? I mean, the guys at like Auth0, I think, murdered it, right? Like they figured out that user interface is massively important. Ease of use, it's so simple to integrate. You know, the Auth0 guys, when they kicked off, you know, I knew like that was going to be where it was. So when Okta picked them up, that seemed like a no-brainer deal. I think Okta got a steal on that acquisition, but you know, who knows in the long run what they're going to do with it. But so far, they seem to be leaving the guys alone and coming out with new products and innovative stuff. So hats off to the Auth0 guys. With regards to like the legacy identity management stuff, you know, you got your Oracles. You know, Sun obviously was acquired by Oracle back in the day, and then their SailPoint came out, and then we had the CA Identity Manager, IBM Tivoli Suite, Microsoft MIM. You know, those were the big heavy hitters back in the day, and I spent most of my time on the IDM Rockstar talking about the Oracle stack, because that was, you know, my main thing that I worked on every day, that Fusion middleware fun stuff, the OIM, OAM, all the O's, right? So nowadays, you know, I get asked a lot, like, where do you see identity management going nowadays? What are people looking for? And a lot of times it's clients asking me, saying, hey, you know, we have this legacy SiteMinder product, or we're sitting on this massive OIM infrastructure. We know there's got to be something better now. What's going on? So a lot of these projects over the past, I'd say 5-6 years, have been migration off what I call the version 1 identity management tools, which are those big chunky ones we were talking about, into kind of the more mainstream stuff. So that's when ForgeRock really started picking up, especially in the SIAM space. Ping, huge players now on the federation side. I mean, Ping Federate, massive tool everywhere, installed everywhere, right? I'm sure everyone that's listening to this, all like 5 of you, know what Ping Federate is. And then we got some of the smaller ones. So then we have like the Auth0 guys, like I was talking about. Then we have the new stuff, which is even more exciting to me, which is identity orchestration. So what is identity orchestration? That is totally up to interpretation. Everyone has a different definition of what it means. Every company that has an orchestration tool will tell you it means whatever they want it to mean. It's not really a standard. It's more of this term that exists in the ether. That is the new buzzword that everyone's jumping on. The people that I think are going to coin it and run away with it are going to be Ping. They just came out with their new Ping DaVinci tool. Obviously, they bought it. They didn't just make it, but they bought, what was it called? Singular Key, I think is what it was called. So they bought that tool, and then they refined it and turned it out as DaVinci. Last summer, I think, it was at the big Ping kickoff, and it was all about DaVinci. It's all about orchestration. And they made sure that everyone knew this is where Ping is going, is all about DaVinci. I got lucky. I got to work on one of the very first DaVinci implementations through Ping for a client. Probably can't go into that much detail, but It was fun to be able to actually play with the tool hands-on in production, you know, actually making the flows and integrating with PingFed and MFA and seeing what it can really do, what its capabilities are, where it excels, and also where it lacks. I'm not gonna lie, there's some serious areas that they have to make some improvements on for that tool to really run away. There's the ForgeRock, they have an orchestration tool as well. That one's really cool. And then there's also Strata Mavericks. That's my personal favorite, but only because I'm a dev geek. So we'll go into that later. But first, let's kind of circle back to what is orchestration, right? So orchestration, in my view, is the tool that can take pretty much any cloud infrastructure, any type of lead-in authentication device, and form it through magic to come out the other end to be whatever you want it to be on that end. So I don't know if I can make that any more clear. But let me go run through an example, because that's a lot easier to understand it this way. Most environments out there, most enterprises, they're running in multi-cloud or data center cloud, et cetera, right? Everyone's a hybrid. No one's purely in AWS or purely in Azure, as much as, you know, Microsoft would love that. So the question comes down to, well, how are you going to integrate your Azure stuff with your AWS stuff, with all your data center stuff? And then you have SiteMinder protecting all these apps, and then you're using PingFed for all your external apps, and then maybe even have some homegrown thing on the back end. And now you got 200 applications with all these weird connections coming in for authentication and authorization. So how do you manage that? Well, this is where orchestration really comes into play. So let me tell you, so how I envision orchestration to be is that no matter what fabric, which is another orchestration term that's out there now, is fabric, which fabric that your identity fabric is in, which really is kind of the newer, fancier way of saying an IDP, right? Your identity provider. So is it in the cloud? Is it a federation tool? Is it social login with Google or Twitter? So it takes any of those identity fabrics and then transforms that authentication token into whatever that backend application needs to authenticate that user seamlessly without the backend app having to do anything and without the front-end authentication systems having to do anything. So what you have is in the middle, this magic app, which is these orchestration tools that will transform, let's say, an OIDC token and then flip that into just a header-based auth for this backend app to use. Now, in the Strata Mavericks world of orchestration, this is where that tool really excels. It's super fast and lightweight. It's literally just a YAML file. Well, actually, correction, they just updated to JSON after me begging them for a year to incorporate JSON and not just stick with this YAML file. They did it, so I'm so happy. Thank you, Strata. I cannot tell you how much my life is so much easier now that you've done that. So there's a single configuration file that handles all the setup. So it's saying, hey, you know, which URLs are you going to protect, what IDP you're going to protect with it, and then what you want that authentication to look like on the back end. So let's say I log into, I want to request access into my portal. So I go to /portal. The orchestrator grabs that request and says, hey, that particular URL, you need to be authenticated with your PingFed IDP. So now it's going to redirect me to PingFed to do my authentication. It's going to see my token there. Now the portal app is looking for just standard headers that coming across to have like a JOT token or something in it. So now what happens is the orchestrator sees that I'm validated, creates a session here, and then flips and creates that headers JOT token of whatever that application needs to allow me in. Now when I go from the portal to some other app or some other part of that app, and let's say I'm going to go to some finance app where I want to write checks. Well, now what's going to happen is the orchestrator says, oh, you're requesting the finance app. Well, actually for that, we want you to log in with your Azure AD account. So we get redirected to Azure to log in and authenticate with that. Also, if you have advanced level mode, you can actually SSO. So once you log into one, you can create this kind of session SSO where you can kind of log into all the different IDPs, doing some crazy custom stuff, but let's not get too far ahead of ourselves. So we're trying to get into finance, we get redirected to Azure, we log in or we SSO in, however it happens, but I get my Azure AD token that I'm now authenticated there. And now because it's finance, I also want to integrate MFA. So now that that's done, it's now going to call, let's say, Duo for an MFA. So I'm going to get a push to my phone. I hit the little button, it gets the authentication there. The orchestrator then allows it. And now for this finance app, let's say it was an old SiteMinder protected app. So now what's going to happen is this orchestrator tool is going to rewrite that authentication token that Azure AD gave it to look like an SSO cookie from SiteMinder back to that app. So now this app never needs to change or know what I'm using for authentication or MFA, it's just going to let that user in because it's already configured to look for what the orchestrator has transformed that authentication token into. This is the real magic, right? This is how like Strata, they migrated like 300 apps on Kroger from SiteMinder, and I want to say 6 months. I want to say 3 months, but I'm just going to say 6 months just to protect myself here because I don't want to get too crazy. But even 6 months is an insanely short amount of time. And it is so true. I've worked with this tool hands-on, and you really can migrate off of a legacy app without having to change any of your back-end apps, even old school stuff. Like, we even worked on migrating off of OAM with Kerberos IWA authentication using Maverick. So we built out a kind of a proof of concept for that as well. Full disclosure, we are partners with Strata. We're also partners with Ping. So let's jump into the Ping tool. The Ping tool is their orchestrator, DaVinci. Again, it's an amazing tool. Has a great UI. Strata is building a UI, but it's a little on the lacking side because they're literally just coming out with it like right now. We're beta testing it with them. Great stuff, but Ping is just super far when it comes to the UI. And what they've built out was it's called a flow. I forget what the term is, but basically you make flows. I forget the flow tool. I don't forget what it's called. But in this UI, you basically can point and click. And what you're going to do is you're going to create a flow of what this authentication or what this request is going to go through. What it is when you come in, the request comes in, DaVinci grabs the request, says, okay, hey, what do you want me to do with it? And it's just a little box, like a Visio diagram, right? You got a box and then a line that connects to the next box. And it's just a decision tree. It just goes all the way down, almost like how, ForgeRock, they have their tools that go through, any type of a workflow, a visual workflow tool, you know what I'm talking about. It's the box with the line to the next box. If this, then go to here. Based on these conditions, do this or this, right? But what you can do is you can actually build with DaVinci a whole UI that gets fronted out to the user. So when a request comes in, you can actually have the login box and everything right there. You can have, collect information, and you can custom build the entire thing. This is where DaVinci is super powerful, is being able to build that custom UI to however you want it on the fly. And then with this huge decision tree, that's awesome. The request comes into the flow, and the flow then can build out the whole custom UI that's prompted to the user. So the request comes in, the user then sees a user login box, username, password, maybe social login, click for Google, click for Twitter. And then from there, we capture the username and password. We then send that off to, let's say, Ping Fed to build a Ping Fed tool, or we can go right to LDAP and bind there to do the authentication. We can then stub that out once they do that, depending on a multitude of factors. Either it's what they've requested, maybe we make another call out to some type of a risk tool that says, hey, what's the risk factor for this particular request? Is it high or low? If it's high, maybe now we're going to prompt them for MFA. If it's low, we're not. If it's coming from intranet, we're internal, we're not going to prompt them for MFA. They're coming in from a VPN, we are going to prompt them from MFA. So you have this whole decision tree that you can go through, and really you can do anything because they open it up for custom development. You can make a REST call to anything. And this is where it gets fun. And this is where, with my previous client, we went crazy, because what we started doing is when the request would come into the flow, our decision trees made a bunch of different calls out to microservices like Lambdas, or maybe we had a couple different Kubernetes containers out there. And from there, we would interact with pretty much anything, right? If you open it up and say, I can make a REST call to anything and get a JSON response or any type of response back, and then continue on with that data, you've basically said you can do anything that you can think of. So that's when this tool gets super powerful. So we call out to these microservices that would call into their data center to look up attributes, to return those back, maybe get their customer data, pair that up with some login information from the portal site. We would do other things where we call in to get their financial records to pull that up, or we call over here and get medical records to pull those up. So we can do all this stuff in this one flow, and to the back-end user, it's just this one seamless login, and then boom, they're now logged into this app where it used to be protected by SiteMinder, but now, again, just like I was saying before with this orchestration tool, the back-end apps don't have to change. It still gets its SiteMinder cookie that it's expecting, but DaVinci has reformed that request and authentication token to look like what that app needs. And it does it all on the fly, super fast. It's a really cool tool. Ping has the tool out there for partners to play with on their demo platform. If you're a partner with them, I highly recommend just start playing with it. Just start building some flows. It comes with a bunch of sample ones in there. It's so much fun to play with. It's one of those things where once you get it, you're like, ooh, look at all these cool things I can do. So yeah, I highly recommend it. So that's my take on what orchestration is, right? So orchestration, it takes anything that you put into it and puts out whatever you want to put out. If you're someone like Strata, it's literally just a plugin that sits on like a reverse proxy type of a deal and just filters and intercepts those requests and pushes those requests out to do whatever based on your config. And then there's DaVinci, which is a whole UI, all cloud-based, and it's a SaaS model for implementing your orchestration. And then they have a whole UI and the whole flow, so that's what they're calling orchestration. So everyone's kind of got this whole moniker of like what orchestration is, but in my mind, orchestration is purely taking anything in, manipulating it however you want, and putting anything out to match whatever it's already needed for minimal back-end code updates. So that, in a nutshell, is what orchestration is, at least to me. And that's all that matters. So now that we know what identity orchestration is, let's get into the next fun topic. Let's talk about the LastPass breach. A while back, I don't know if you heard about it or not, but LastPass, the company that stores all your passwords and makes life super simple for you, had a pretty big breach in their system. I have been anti-LastPass, not just LastPass, I don't want to call them out. I have been anti-password vaulting, personal management, storage in the cloud forever. Because I'm a big, unless you own it and unless you control of it, you just consider it gone, right? So if you're putting all your passwords into some app where they save them in the cloud for you, but don't worry, we're doing it super secure, you're doing it super secure for now. Eventually, someone's going to get in and steal all that information. And then what do you do, right? Like now all of your passwords are being sold around the dark web and you don't even know about it half the time. Like they'll publish some of the breaches that occur, but I guarantee you they're not pushing out every time something happens. They're not telling everybody, hey, we had another breach. Only when it really kind of gets popular do they really kind of bring it out there, because they have to, right? They can't hide it. So if you're storing all of your passwords in the cloud, basically you're giving all your passwords to someone else because you trust them to protect them more than you could. All the passwords are stored in one place. So if someone gets access in there, all your stuff is gone. Now, I've been saying for years, it's just a matter of time, because eventually it's going to happen. I mean, every day you hear about how websites have been breached and all their user records, their passwords have been stolen, and those are just the ones you hear about, obviously. There's way more going on than we're ever going to know about, but I would never store my super important stuff with someone else in the cloud that is a massive target. Because me, I'm not a target, right? I mean, there might be a person maybe trying to target me for some weird reason, but in general, I don't have the entire world targeting me to try to steal my passwords. What they're going to do is they're absolutely going to target someone where they're storing hundreds of thousands of people's passwords in one centralized location. So that's a huge target. And there was a breach with LastPass. So what happened was, I'm not sure if the guy was an engineer or what here, but he was a guy that worked for LastPass, and he had a Plex server at home. Plex server is that multimedia server where you can store movies and TV shows, whatever, and watch them and stream them and all that kind of fun stuff. It's like home hobby stuff, right? Well, he was running a really old version of Plex that had a remote execute vulnerability on it, and someone was targeting him because they knew that he was working for LastPass. So he was a targeted attack, so spear. Well, I don't think it was spear phishing, because they actually was using an exploit. So they exploited the Plex box, they put a keylogger on his machine, they grabbed all his usernames and passwords to connect into the data center and all that fun stuff. So therefore, all that got reported back to the hackers, they logged right in and stole whatever it is that they got out of LastPass. And that's it. They didn't go and hack LastPass. LastPass security is probably great, right? I mean, their job is protecting passwords, so I'm probably pretty sure that their security is locked down around the vaults for those passwords. But if you can get onto someone's old Plex server and just throw a keylogger on their box, and you can effectively become them, since everyone's working from home nowadays, you're in. So it doesn't really matter that your vault is super secured with all these passwords in the cloud. So because you got one, chink in the armor, the whole thing falls. And that's why I'm paranoid as hell about these things. So this is a great segue into Passwordless. Passwordless is the future tech of authentication. Most forward thinkers in the financial industry especially, they've been planning for passwordless logins and just, I don't know, what's the best word to say? Not like hankering, but they've been kind of spearheading the argument for it, right? They're like, hey, let's use certificates, let's use anything other than passwords, anything other than something that someone can write down on a piece of paper and someone else can take a picture of, someone could guess, someone could breach. We need something stronger. And so with that, lots of companies have started coming out of the woodworks and just killing it. 1Cosmos, awesome tool. They make a great they make a great passwordless solution with an app for doing push notifications. They got QR code scanning. They also have decentralized ID with a blockchain. It's a private blockchain backend. We're not going to go into that right now, but they have a really great product. They've pushed out to a bunch of different companies right now. They're killing it. There's another company out of New York called Hyper. They're another passwordless company. They're doing really amazing. It's, you know, it's one of those things where once people realize that passwordless isn't just here, but it's better than passwords, it's easier to implement, and overall, it's actually way more cost effective. It's a lot cheaper to run a passwordless solution than a password one, just for things like password resets, breaches, and all the other fun stuff that comes with passwords, forced password resets, and people forgetting their passwords. It's a nightmare, right? And all of that just goes away with this passwordless solution. And I'm a big proponent. We're actually building our own passwordless solution that's based purely on the Web3 spec, where we're using Ethereum wallets as your authentication device. We'll go into that in a different time. The product's called Tier. It's amazing. It's going to be the best passwordless product in the world by far, obviously, because we're making it. But I don't go too far into that, not right now. So passwordless is definitely here to stay. We're at the very beginning stages of passwordless. If your company or you're in there and you're thinking, hey, should I be looking into it? People are already well into production. Very large institutions are already running very secure passwordless software suites out there. I highly recommend that you at least start looking into it if it's not on your radar, because this is where we're all going. Passwords are definitely going away. We've finally gotten over that educational hump where people are wary. You know, it's technically early adopter stage on the enterprise level, but from a technological level, we're definitely past the early adopter. I mean, this is sound technology. It's been proven out. It's been attacked and it's been audited. You know, this is where we're going. So definitely look into the passwordless stuff. Okay, so now let's talk a little bit about Web3. And this is a very broad topic, right? I mean, this is like saying, hey, let's talk about the internet. It's like, what are you going to talk about? There's an infinite amount of topics that we can go over. I just want to briefly touch on it right now, just because in future podcasts, we're going to go down into more smaller, fine-grained discussions about specific applications, different security that's around there, how we can integrate that into identity and access management specifically. We'll touch about all that, but first, let's just kind of talk a little bit about what Web3 is and how can you kind of play with it today, right? Let's get you set up to where you can actually go out and do something until the next time we talk. So the next time we talk, you'd be like, hey, I actually have a wallet. I was actually able to download some crypto. And I really don't know much more than that, but at least I'm making steps. That's where you want to be. You need to start just getting involved in Web3. It's not a gimmick. It's not the hype thing. Yes, there's the whole world's, Bitcoin, it's going to go to the moon, and when Lambo and all these other fun Web3 DApps and DeFi and exchanges and all this crazy stuff. But don't worry about any of that. All you need to know is this is where things are going to be moving. They're already moving there under the hood. You just don't know it, right? So AWS has a whole hosted blockchain management service. Like Amazon actually just announced, I think yesterday, I just saw the news article, they have a whole NFT marketplace coming out. So yeah, Amazon is launching an NFT marketplace. This is going to be bigger than anyone has ever thought. So I really encourage you just to start playing around in the Web3 space, because if you're not savvy about it now, especially for other contractors, like myself and you guys that are out there like doing this stuff, if you're not savvy on this tech, when it comes and hits mainstream, you're already too late. You're left behind, and all the Web3 guys are just going to steal up all that business from you, and you don't want that. And if you're an enterprise or you're the CIO of some company, you're thinking, hey, how's Web3 going to help me? I don't see that working. Remove that kind of veil of ignorance, right? Don't just clam onto that thing being like, oh, well, I don't know it. I'm just not going to do anything. Like, you can't stick your head in the sand. This stuff is coming full force. It's like when I was talking to my dad as a kid, be like, the internet is going to be the thing. And he's like, we'll see. Like, this is the next one of those. So don't be shy. Get out there, start playing with it. Let's get you a little bit more familiar. So the first thing I want you to do, if you're completely new to this Web3 stuff, is I want you to download an app to your phone called MetaMask. It's got a little fox icon. Download that. Just set up a wallet. Run through the steps. It guides you. It's got the little wizard. You're going to set up a wallet. Your wallet is just what you're going to use for, in most terms, it's what you're going to use to hold cryptocurrency. But what we're going to be talking about is that's going to be your authentication token. That's going to represent you. That's going to be your identity, a sovereign ID. You own it. So instead of your identity, your username and password stored on 1,000 different websites, and obviously you're using the same password everywhere, because why would you want to use a different password on every website? Because that's just annoying, right? Unless you use like LastPass. But this lets you have your credentials hosted and owned locally. So the only time your credentials could ever be stolen or breached is if someone got onto your machine and stole your keys because you improperly secured them, as opposed to this website got breached and now your password is stolen and now sold around the world. So now they logged into your bank and then they got your email and now you're locked out of Instagram and you're tweeting, someone hacked my Instagram account. No, they didn't. They actually hacked some other website where they have the same Twitter password, and that's how they got into your account, right? So with Sovereign ID, you control who has access to allow you into things, which is in the EU, they're actually making this a standard. They're way ahead of the states with regards to Sovereign ID. Sovereign ID just means you own it, right? So you'll see decentralized ID, DID, Sovereign ID. It's all the same thing. It's really just saying that you own your credentials. If you're familiar with PGP, public-private key infrastructure, this plays into all of that. That's what your wallet is. It's really just a public key, which is your wallet address, and a private key. So you sign your messages with your private key, and then you can hand your public key out to everyone and say, hey, you can reach me using this address. So once you've installed MetaMask, you're going to follow that wizard, you're going to create a wallet, and once that's done, you're going to have your first Web3 identity. You're going to have an address and a private key. Don't share that private key. Don't share those words that it shows you, which is called your mnemonic phrase. Don't share that with anybody. Next time I'll go and we'll walk through creating a wallet and show everyone how that works. But right now I just want you to play with it. You can't break anything. You're not going to actually store any money or anything valuable in this wallet. So for the first time, don't even worry about it. Just play with it. Just go through the motions. Because now you're starting to learn from hands-on. And that's how you really, you learn anything, right? Is from doing. So get your first wallet. From there, we're going to circle back next week and we're going to talk about what is an NFT. What is cryptocurrency? We're going to get you an NFT on your wallet. We're going to get some cryptocurrency on your wallet. And you don't have to even pay for all this stuff. A lot of these things you can just get them for free. There's free stuff out there. We can even make our own. Maybe I'll do that. Maybe I'll make an NFT, a cryptocurrency, just to share with you guys. So then you can download one and add it to your wallet and run around and be like, look, I have the Nyedis NFT. I'm awesome. And then we'll have a big meetup and anyone who has the Nyedis NFT gets to get a photo with me. So I think this is a good place to kind of head things off. For more information, go to Nyedis.com. We have all the typical corporate crap, but in there is our blog. And on that blog, we have lots of fun articles where we'll write about hacks that we found out, like this LastPass stuff we'll talk about there, scripts that we've come up with to make your identity management implementation quicker and easier. We publish all that there. All this Web3 talk, we go into more details on there. So if you want more information, we actively put out more info there for you to check out. Again, please subscribe to this because I don't want to have to chase you down and tell you every time we have a new awesome podcast. I mean, come on, when else do you have an amazing identity and access management podcast? You don't. This is it. This is the only one. So subscribe to this so you get the cool notifications saying, hey, Adam's talking again. I need to check this out. So subscribe, leave some comments, tell me what you think. If you want to tell me how awesome I am, please write that as much as you want down. Share it with the world. Please, 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 because I'm not just doing this because we want to get our name out there. I feel like I can actually help people out. So the more people we can help out, the more people we can educate, I think the better off. So please get me your questions. You can email me directly, adam@nyedis.com, Nyedis.com. Here it is. I don't know. Email me your questions. We'd love to help you out. Hit us up in the comments here on YouTube or wherever else you're watching this thing. I don't even know how this is going to work. This confangled technology stuff. So yeah, I'm going to leave you with that. I'm Adam. I'll see you guys around. This has been the Nyedis Anarchy Series inaugural podcast. I'm out. Later.